Welcome everyone, this is On Just Restart, and earlier this week, by the time you see this video, we got actual real news on Breath of the Wild 2. Sure, it didn't really come at the Game Awards, but just a few days later, a patent came to light. We are seeing some actual mechanics for Breath of the Wild 2 in the most recent patent that showed up that shows a few different cool mechanics that we can kind of break down a little bit, and I actually feel like are suggesting some pretty cool things about the gameplay for the sequel to Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, and a lot of it is going to be related to how we interact with the world in the sky or the air. So today we're going to be going into the patent, what we've seen from them, the mechanics it sort of shows off, and then extrapolating what this may suggest for the rest of the game. Now before we jump into things, let me first very quickly talk about my social media. You may see a few different things here on screen. You can check that all out. It's linked in the description below. And of course, if you like what you're seeing here, you can subscribe. So there are a few different things shown off, and the first couple things I feel like aren't too groundbreaking on the surface because they basically just show off what we saw from the second trailer. But once we go over everything, I think there's a very, very intriguing picture that's coming together here. So here's the first image we got here, and it's showing a body being able to or not being able to go through certain platforms. The angle at which you go at certainly matters, but not just from where you enter, but also from where you come out. You need to be able to stand on your 2 feet in order to get through the platform, but also be able to fit your entire body. Now what's fascinating about this is that it basically is demonstrating how the mechanics will work for being able to warp from below through a platform. We saw that in the trailer, and it implies that this is an actual mechanic in place beyond just a specific animation for a few particular areas that we can use all throughout at least the Sky Islands, but potentially more. So this is something we're going to be doing throughout the game, and it's going to be something that we're going to be able to experiment with and mix up with other interesting mechanics that Breath of the Wild 2 will have. And then for the next two images, we see something that looks to be related to that weird sort of time stasis mechanic. That mechanic where we saw that steel ball and it was going back in time. So it's a really cool ability that you're actually able to suspend a particular object in time and then reverse its history. At least that's how it seems to be from what we've seen so far. Now from what I can see of these documents, I don't see anything necessarily new from it, but if you guys have noticed anything about it, please share it with me in the comments below. But still, it's nice to see that this is a mechanic that they're also working on. It gets me sort of thinking about what other sort of cool abilities we could be seeing in Breath of the Wild 2 that may stack upon the mechanics already in place from Breath of the Wild 1. So this right here just blows my mind. So if you take a look at these boxes here, what we're seeing are different sort of animations for how Link can travel through the sky. There's a normal falling, there's a dive falling, and then there's backward falling. And then it's just crazy. There's a high velocity falling as well, and then of course the normal glider stuff. Some of this we've seen from the initial Breath of the Wild, but be able to fall backwards, that's something they're adding there, and being able to dive straight down. It's looking like there's going to be a great deal of exploration in the actual sky. They are looking at different ways that you can maneuver in the sky in a more three-dimensional way, which I think is very fitting for the sequel to the first open air game. I say that in air quotes, but I think in this case they're really satisfying that name here because there's more to this air exploration. And even to the right, we see that you can do some of the arrow attacks while in these different angles as well. The implication here is that you're going to be able to move your body in different ways, turn and rotate in the air, and react to other objects or enemies in the sky and fight against them, at least with your bow. This is very, very exciting to me because it implies that there's a huge focus on sky exploration and gameplay and combat here. And this is the kind of thing that's going to make Breath of the Wild 2 feel really different from Breath of the Wild 1. This is one of those things that when we start the game, and I bet that sky area is near the beginning of the game, we're going to jump in and we're going to see some of these mechanics and we're going to feel like, whoa, this is something we could not do in the first one. And it's going to make things feel really fresh and exciting. And it really just kind of gets me thinking about what else could be happening here with Breath of the Wild 2. What other sorts of mechanics could be stacked upon this here? Like, if we can do these kinds of things in the sky, maybe there's more than just bow attacks. Maybe we can do things with different weapons like swords or lances and such. As great as Breath of the Wild is, and it may very well be my favorite game of all time, it's up there for sure, there are things that I think could be improved upon, including the combat. I think when you compare the sword mechanics to previous Zelda games, they're a bit limited. Granted, there's so many other things you can do to fight enemies with different weapon types and using the environment and the physics and such. The overall system is deeper, but the actual sword mechanics themselves are far more simplified. It would be nice to see them expand upon that a little bit, and maybe that will even extend to some of these updated aerial mechanics that we're seeing here. Because if we're going to be able to use our bow like this in the sky, perhaps there are going to be sky enemies, and maybe we won't just be using our bow. Of course, since it's in the sky, perhaps using the bow will be more convenient, but maybe not. Maybe having some melee attacks will also make sense as well in the sky. There's going to be a lot of this aerial combat. And if they're designing so much around the aerial combat here and the aerial movement, yes, there's going to be a lot of sky exploration. Maybe this will also extend to other things we can see. We've theorized in the past that there could be some sort of sky mount. If there's going to be a lot more sky exploration here, Nintendo and the Zelda team may want to offer more ways to move around the sky. We've already seen that mechanic where you can go from the ground to a platform right through it, and we're seeing these different ways to fall through the sky and fight in the sky. Maybe they're going to be adding even more things as well. So perhaps this could even include something like a loft wing. Now, people theorize the loft wings are extinct, but in the world of Breath of the Wild, so many different things can come into place. And if you think about it, the Sky Realm was missing in Breath of the Wild 1. We could not see it. It's above the clouds, apparently, or maybe there's some sort of blockage there. It's actually very similar to Skyward Sword. We can't exactly see the islands in the sky from the land, from Hyrule. So perhaps the Loft Wings are somewhere up there, and in Breath of the Wild 2, with this Sky Realm we're seeing, perhaps they exist in this sky, and those could be creatures we can use to explore the sky at greater lengths, and that can be used in conjunction with some of these updated combat and aerial mechanics here. And even if it's not Loft Wings, perhaps it could be something else. Maybe we can ride the dragons, or some other sort of object or creature that lives in the sky in the Sky Realm. There's a lot of possibilities here. And going back to the combat thing, if they're adding these different mechanics to fight in the sky, then there's going to be things to fight in the sky. What will be those things? I don't think it's going to just be flying guardians. I think there's going to be something new there. Perhaps there will be some dragons. Perhaps there will be giant bats. Perhaps some new enemies we've never seen before in the Zelda universe. Perhaps there will be something along the lines of what we saw in that second trailer, but an aerial version of it. When you think about all the different things you can do in Breath of the Wild, even now discoveries are still being made. There's so much you can do with the mechanics of Breath of the Wild and the physics engine. It's kind of mind-boggling, really. But then when we take a look at Breath of the Wild 2 and some of the mechanics we're already starting to see with these patents and such, they're really adding to it here, and I'm sure there's a lot more. Now, of course, not everything from Breath of the Wild 1 will translate over to Breath of the Wild 2. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if stasis as we know it isn't there anymore, or any of the other current runes. They may give us entirely new runes. So some of the previous mechanics won't exist in Breath of the Wild 1, but a lot of them will still be there or will be updated in some way, and they will be stacked upon with some of these new mechanics we're talking about now and more that they have not revealed yet. And when you bring in some of these old mechanics and some of these new mechanics and you mix them together, it's very likely that we're going to be seeing a lot more new ways to play through the world of Breath of the Wild 2. And that, to me, is incredibly exciting because the amount of things you can come up with in Breath of the Wild 1 is just mesmerizing. So for Breath of the Wild 2, they may be taking it to a whole other level. And yes, I am very excited about this prospect. But what do you guys make of all these different mechanics we're seeing here? Do you think it's going to add a lot to the sequel to Breath of the Wild? Does it make you want to play it more? Have you noticed things about these diagrams and images that I haven't? Please bring it up in the comments below. Anyways, everyone, this is On Just Restart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.